Roger Williams University is hosting a crisis management seminar on May 3rd at their Providence campus. Crises, whether a natural disaster, cyber attack, or financial instability, can have severe repercussions if not handled properly. This is where crisis management plays a pivotal role. Join Roger Williams MBA students and expert speakers to learn how to prepare for the unexpected. The program is totally free and open to the public. You can register online at rwu.edu/events/crisis-management-symposium.
This is the Bartholomew Town Podcast.
All right, so I just walked in the door, started making dinner, and glanced at my phone when I see this tweet from Steph Machado over at WPRI that details the first time that we're seeing the estimated rental prices for the Superman building apartments. And anybody who's been listening throughout the course of the last, 6 months or whenever this project first came to fruition, I guess it was probably back in June, right? I've kind of lost track of the time frame here off the top of my head anyway. But you know that I've been describing this project as something that is, part of a what I call the new Providence, the ecosystem surrounding the tech industries, meds and eds, and what I call the trust fund world, if you will, the trust fund kids that, look, as we continue to move forward as a state, we need to start to think about new industries. There's no question about that. In fact, some of these new industries are already here and are starting to percolate in a meaningful way. There's no question about it. And with those new industries is going to be a need to find the appropriate amenities, which includes housing and all the fixtures that goes along with it, right? There's no doubt. And at the same time as we're doing all this, we need to be focusing times 10, not quadrupling down, times 10 or more on what I call the old Providence. And I think that this can be extrapolated, of course, to a statewide audience, no question about it. As the city of Providence goes, so goes the state of Rhode Island, ... We know that story, right? So the idea that you're going to build out the Superman building, you're going to rescue it, you're going to have a sweet deal approved by the Providence City Council that is going to be formulated to really manipulate a classical capitalism into a situation where a bit of socialism takes place, and the state kind of bails out a private developer to a certain extent, and in loose terms, somewhat anyway, partners on a project that would, in theory, generate economic development in a downtown area that right now is certainly secondary to the jewelry district, the so-called innovation district over by the pedestrian bridge downtown, and other parts of the city, in what once was a very vibrant downtown. I mean, you go all the way back to, not all the way back, but you go back in 100 years or something like that. The downtown area was a regional, if not nationally known, vibrant and economically active area. But things change, obviously, there's no doubt about that. And we find ourselves today in a moment where there are some great restaurants down there. There's some great shops and some entertainment spots. But for the most part, when you think of downtown Providence, you don't necessarily think of it as the number one destination, even within the context of the city, right? Like I said, the Van Leesten pedestrian bridge and everything surrounding that. And then, of course, the jewelry district. But for me, also, the West End, South Providence, to a certain extent now, Olneyville, certainly here in Elmwood, where I'm recording this podcast right now, all of that is quite vibrant and unique. And walk up and down Broad Street, and you can find an array of things that could occupy an entire year of exploration for anybody. But we have the Superman building project, and look, the reality is that, like I said, we need to understand that there's a desire and that there's an active and important project happening in this state, which I think is essential, and it involves the blue economy, it involves healthcare, and it involves other aspects of tech and startup, and certainly in our educational institutions and the things that surround an educational institution. I'm talking about higher ed here with Brown University, Johnson & Wales, University of Rhode Island College, Providence College, Roger Williams University. All of that is highly integral to the success of the state, and the ideas that can come out of that also parlay and maybe are even separate from, but are certainly something to consider, those who would normally quote unquote be based in New York City, or perhaps even Boston, or perhaps even Austin, Texas, or something like that, Chattanooga, Tennessee, whatever the case may be, that say, you know what, I have the opportunity to work on a remote basis. I'm going to take my human operation and live in Providence, Rhode Island. and I'll still have, from a business productivity standpoint, I'll still be based in another municipality in another state, but my spending habits will be deployed in Providence, Rhode Island. So that's the theory behind the Superman building anyway. You get a certain activity going in the downtown area. All of a sudden, the bodega does better. All of a sudden, the grocery store does better. All of a sudden, the nightclub does better. The bar, the restaurant, the bookstore, whatever the case may be. That's the theory, the economic theory that goes into such a maneuver. All the while, here in Rhode Island and on a national basis, we see this enormous housing crisis. We see ourselves likely on the edge of a recession. I mean, let's be clear about that. We see ourselves in a moment of wage stagnation that is nowhere near comparable to the cost of living increases that we see. We'll look at the public utilities situation here in Rhode Island, where the electric prices are going to be going up in a skyrocketing manner for so much of the state. And let me preface this also by saying that, let's be clear, there are efforts that are being undertaken. I mean, Governor McKee has certainly pledged within the ARPA dollars something like $250 million into affordable housing. I mean, there's a lot of projects that are going on that don't necessarily make the headlines. Mayor Lorza with a project that he announced late last week in which a number of abandoned houses would be transformed into livable houses here in the city. So there are things that are taking place, and a lot of this stuff aims to address the most vulnerable, be that the unhoused community, be that those who are victims of whether it be domestic violence or anything that need to escape in one way, shape, or form their current living situation. So we have some programs, some things that are taking place on a certain level. Now, the zoning changes, most of them that would be required to really see the type of development that would actually maneuver the state towards reasonable status in terms of affordable housing. Well, that's at the municipal level, and that's almost an entirely different discussion, one which we may get into in a debate context, one which we'll certainly get into down the line. And when I say down the line, in the coming months, as we start to look towards the future, when things, as I say, they are starting to get really tight. There's no question about it. Things are going to start to get more and more tight for the average person. But the Superman building itself, it is an iconic piece of architecture. It is something that can define the city. I do think that intangibles are very important to any city. I mean, take a look at any building that defines a skyline, anything that is an institution within a community. And I don't know that the average person, when they think of Providence, Rhode Island, especially the average Providence resident, necessarily cares too much about the Superman building itself. But when you talk about expanding the city, having the lights on in the Superman building, having it be something generative rather than subtractive or at least neutral, is definitely a better place to be. So all of those things being said, and again, not to necessarily dismiss the notion that we have an emerging industry here in a broad context of technology, and there are salaries there that do allow the worker or the visionary, the startup person, the person who has an entrepreneurial concept that is properly executed and makes them a bunch of money. You want a place for those people to be. I'm not saying that we have to necessarily erase and eradicate the entire system as a whole in any way, shape, or form. But when it comes to this Superman building, folks, let's be honest about it. I mean, the idea that the Superman building is in any way, shape, or form, as it's currently constituted, something that's going to benefit the average person, other than those things that I just stated, where, yeah, the building is going to be occupied potentially, right? And if the building's occupied, number one, the lights are on and there's activity down there. And number two, you've got a situation where the bodega and the nightclub and the restaurant and the bookstore in the downtown area are likely to do better than if you did not have that building full. But that is a narrow scope as compared with the reality of most people here in this state. And again, this isn't a conversation that should be limited or viewed through any kind of political lens. I don't care if you think of yourself as a progressive, an anarchist, a Republican, a moderate Democrat, whatever the case may be. If you are a member of the working class in any way, shape, or form, you should be absolutely stunned by what this project actually represents, in the sense that concurrently there is not, at least in a visible sense, 10 times the amount of activity taking place that can benefit you. We are either in or entering into a crisis which is going to be generational. There's no question about it. The haves and have-nots will be on display in a way that we have not seen in our lifetime. I think most of us, unless you were alive during the Hoovervilles. So I get this tweet from Steph Machado where they outline the prices of the Superman building, the apartments, what they're going to cost. And again, they got this notion that, what is it, 20, some percentage. And again, I should have this up in front of me. I don't, because I just wanted to hop on the mic. But something like 20% of the units are going to be quote unquote affordable. And they're going to range from $1,384 to $2,076. Now, those are likely going to be in the studio, maybe one bedroom range that's not specified. But let me give you the bulk of the project, at least 80% of the Superman building project, again, which is using a socialistic tactic, using government partnership dollars to bail out a developer who made an investment that went belly up. The market rate unit rentals are expected to range from, again, this comes from Machado over at Channel 12, $2,071 to $2,289 for a studio apartment, $2,616 to $3,052 for a one-bedroom, $3,706 to $4,142 for a two-bedroom apartment, $4,796 to $5,287 for a three-bedroom apartment in downtown Providence, plus utilities, which are going up, plus where you're going to park your vehicle if you have one. And don't tell me you're going to ride your bike everywhere around Providence 365. Maybe if you got 200-something units, maybe 15, 20 people in that building are actually going to ride their bike everywhere or take public transportation while they can't find enough, pay the drivers enough to have sufficient bus routes. They can't even deliver the kids to school right now. Folks, these units are designed for people who, number one, like I said, perhaps you work for a New York City tech firm and you, during COVID or otherwise, discovered that Rhode Island is a place that you'd like to be. You know, we got the beaches, we've got some, great restaurants. You like the proximity between rural and urban and semi-urban and suburban locales. You like the proximity to the airport, whatever the case may be. You got family here. And let's say you're working for a New York tech firm that is now either entirely hybrid or remote. Is either entirely remote or hybrid in the sense that you only have to go to work either once a week or here and there for meetings, whatever the case may be. You can just hop on the Acela and boom, that's all good. This apartment building is for you. These apartments are perfect for you. Let's say you're a student. You're going to one of the fine higher education institutions here in the state. And you live in a dormitory scenario where you don't like your roommate and you're from an upper class background and you're looking for your own place. Well, perhaps your parents say, yeah, that Superman building, that looks pretty modern. That looks pretty cool. Here's the signed guarantor form along with first, last, and security. And here's some money to pay the utilities and we'll drop it. We'll zell you every single month the payment for the rental and for the utilities and for the auxiliary expenses, like wherever you're going to park your vehicle, so on and so forth. Maybe you're somebody who is fortunate enough to have a trust fund of your own. You spend the day sipping coffee, vaping, and coming up with ideas for some major project that's either going to save the world or going to make you famous. And you spend, most of your time doing that. This is a perfect opportunity for you. Perhaps you're up in Boston, you're boozing it up. You're going to take the train back home, or more likely, you're going to Uber it back from Boston. The Uber XL with you and your friends, it can drop you off right in front of the Superman building, and you can take the elevator up to your $3,052 one-bedroom apartment so you can lay your head down after a night of boozing up in Boston. Perhaps you're somebody who is fortunate enough to be in your 20s and have gotten through med or law school and are enormously successful. Well, congratulations. There's actually nothing wrong with that. You still probably shouldn't have to shell out $3,052 for a one-bedroom apartment in downtown Providence. Now, there's one of two things that are going to happen here. Again, it's going to either display the haves and have-nots in a way that we haven't seen in a very long time, at least in most of our lifetimes, or it's going to go belly up. Because as of right now, I don't know one person that would, in their right mind, shell out a baseline rental fee of $3,000 per month to reside in downtown Providence, whether it's the Superman building or whether they take the Empire State Building by a series of helicopters and drop it off in downtown Providence. They park the Empire State Building on Westminster Street. I don't care if you take the Taj Mahal, the Sphinx, and drop it off in downtown Providence. You will not find, I can't think of one person in any sector, be it in the artistic world, be it in the average Joe world, be it in the political world, be it in the media world, be it in the tech world that exists here, that would actually find that to be an attractive proposal. These units are going to be, for the studios, 421 square feet to 653 square feet. They're going to be about 500 square feet for the average studio or one-bedroom apartment. Meanwhile, you got people living on top of each other here who have college degrees, sometimes advanced degrees, working multiple jobs, driving DoorDash on top of whatever it is they're doing. This is not a moment when we look at this current election cycle where there are significantly important choices to be made. Don't get me wrong. And by the way, that is something that you should not necessarily, the ship has sailed. So the idea that an election is necessarily going, or the result of election is necessarily going to determine the outcome of this project. This project is underway. At this point, if it fails, if it goes belly up, we have an even more enormous problem on our hands. But this is an illustration of where we need to get this state under control and where we need to get this country under control. Now, I understand. I'm not even saying whether or not I could or couldn't afford these units. I mean, the hell with it. I'm not going to live in these places. You kidding me? I mean, let's be real. Let's be real. And the idea to say, oh, it's Rhode Island, it's not New York, doesn't matter. We should be, you want to be there to meet the demand when the demand comes. I understand that. You don't want to get caught with your tail between your legs. But the idea that this project is in any way, shape, or form something that the average Rhode Islander should be looking at and applauding and saying, boy, isn't that great, is outrageous. It's outrageous. I'm not laying the blame on any one person or any one politico or any one business leader or anything like that. They have an agenda as well sometimes. And look, if you have properties downtown and you're somebody who wants to see that area flourish, you want not only the building to be developed and occupied, you want to have people in there who can spend the big money. My argument is that the type of people who are going to live in this aren't even going to be in any way, shape, or form, for the most part, tethered to this community. Unless I'm missing something completely, we do not have the anywhere near the ecosystem from a salary standpoint in a pool of people that are going to live in a 400, 500 square foot apartment on the 15th, 16th, 20th, whatever it is, floor of a building in downtown Providence. You're talking about 20 and 30-year-olds, maybe 40-year-olds, maybe the retiree wants to live there. But the primary target audience is the 27-year-old, 32-year-old who might otherwise be in New York, who either has a salary that is off the charts or whose parents are paying for it. And they're hanging out all day, sipping coffee, and coming up with ideas for what they're going to do to save the world. And again, that is part of our ecosystem, and that's fine. But let's not get carried away as if the Superman building is a model for what this state should be doing, what this city should be doing. It should be the exception. It should be the exception. This is a moment where I call on progressives, Republicans, whoever you are as a member of the working class, whatever that means to you, should be banding together to say we will not tolerate a state and an ecosystem that is going to exaggerate the haves and have-nots to such an extreme. Again, the governor is engaged ARPA dollars in a meaningful way. We're going to see, I think, more and more opportunities, and there's going to be haters that are going to say, well, wait a minute, they're building, houses in tiny houses in Cranston for the homeless. We don't want that here in our community. There's going to be a lot of NIMBYism. There's going to be a lot of this, that, and the other going on. Most of this has to do with problems at the municipal level, whether it's the Airbnb and that nonsense and the runaway capitalism that's taking place there. And when I say runaway capitalism, I mean people who have found loopholes and have gone to town with them in order to make dollars that are way outpacing what should be the actual reward for the innovation or the product or good or service that they've created and are deploying. Can't turn your back on people. This state cannot turn its back on people anymore. We cannot allow ourselves to get caught up. And I'm not saying that we should abandon the project right now. I'm not saying that the project will not serve a certain audience. I just described the audience that it will serve, and if they come and you go with if we build it, they will come model. There will be capital deployed in this area. In the meantime, what about what's going on for the rest of us? What is happening in a tangible term? Front page, celebrated headlines on a day in, day out basis. And I'm not talking about for the most vulnerable. And we need to take care of the most vulnerable first. I'm talking about for the average person. I'm lucky. I got a place to live. I like it. Is it perfect? No. Can I afford it? Rent went up 20% a couple of months ago on my lease. My salaries or none of my client, I'm not billing my sponsors more. Most people right now are very, very concerned about where we're heading. And if you're not paying attention. And don't give me it's the president, it's the it's way beyond that. It's way beyond that. Back in the Occupy Wall Street era, it was the 99% versus the 1%. That's more true now than ever before. And you don't have to wear the anonymous mask or go play djembe in a park to be engaged in this. Just think about it and talk to your municipal leaders. Talk to people who are in your community about what are we going to do here? What kind of world do you want? You can build the Superman building out and develop it into this project, and it may serve the city well. What else is happening? Concurrently, and in my opinion, it needs to be at a rate of 10 times. For every Superman building project, there needs to be 10 projects that are designed, engaged to serve the average working class person. I didn't really watch South Park. Mostly I didn't have cable TV when I was a kid. I never had cable until I got to college, and I had it in my dorm room at URI. Never really watched South Park, but we were going through, the gentrification of Newport several years ago. And, the artist class generally comes right at, kind of in tandem with the residents and community that have been in a particular place for generations, the generational class who are the most affected and who should be mostly prioritized. They're the ones who are most impacted. But the artist class tends to surface in all my experiences in New York and in Newport in a way that work hand in hand with that generational resident. And we started to see in Newport with the Airbnbs this transformation of the city that was just unbelievable. In a matter of a year or two, just the place emptied out of its artists, innovators, and workers. and it still hasn't recovered. A buddy of mine reminded me of, or pointed me towards a South Park bit. Soda Sopa. Soda Sopa. You know this? You ever hear this?
There's a certain quality, vibe, and energy that is Soda Sopa. From the independent merchants and unique cafes to the rustic charm of a mixed-income crowd. Where else can you let loose your wild side while still being a part of helping the local economy? And now, a chance to own a piece of this most exciting area of South Park. Announcing the Lofts at Soda Sopa. 2,000 square foot flats that put you right in the heart of it.
Good luck. You're going to get a 400 square feet.
Night out eating and shopping in Soda Sopa. Just take a few steps and you're home. With modern styling, these lofts are sleek, sexy, and oh so Soda Sopa. And for those very privileged few, the most private and exclusive ownership opportunities here. Announcing the residences at the Lofts at Soda Sopa.
All right, you get the idea. Soda Sopa. Superman. For those very privileged select few. And now a chance to own. Well, you won't even get a chance to own it. A chance to rent. In the heart of downtown Providence. The Superman building. We should make commercials for this thing. Maybe that's how we can all fund. Maybe we can all do trades. We just participate somehow in a way to, market this thing. Live the life downtown. Introducing the Superman building. Find residencies in the heart of the greatest city in America. Starting at just $3,000 for a studio apartment. After a night of drinking and vaping in Boston, your Uber XL will drop you off right in the heart of downtown Providence. Then take the elevator up to the 16th floor to your super studio. For just $3,000 a month, you can be a part of the action. The Superman building, now leasing. It's time you did something super for yourself. The Superman building in the heart of downtown Providence. Yeah, I think maybe that's the future industry. We all just find ways to drum up advertising for projects that won't benefit us otherwise, right?
Now you can have access to luxury refined while still just steps away from the action.
Yeah, just steps away from the action. Just steps away from the pedestrian bridge. Just steps away from the train station to take you to work in New York. Just steps away from your Uber XL to take you down to the beach in Narragansett.
These finally appointed residences all feature state-of-the-art finishes and balconies.
I bet they would.
Historic Kenny's house.
I bet they would. I bet they would have exactly what you would want for $3,000 in terms of the kitchen and all of that. That's for sure. And hey, again, there's a part of our state. We're building it. And it's important. It's important that we have that concurrent development in those super sectors. I am a big proponent of the blue economy. I am a huge proponent of innovation and technology. I'm a huge proponent of changing the dynamics of our economy to not only be modernized, but to be a global force to be reckoned with. It's just easy to make fun of this project when you think about what the average person is going through right now. That's my take. And seeing those rents tonight, man, they just jumped out, and I said, well, wait a second. Wait a second. Know the room. Know the moment that we're in. Know where you're at. We've got to do a lot better. And hey, it's at the municipal level where most of these problems are at. So whatever town you're in, I know East Providence today had a big announcement. They finally got themselves up to the 10% affordable, capital A, affordable housing metric. There's a lot of municipalities in this state that are not at that point. But it's more than that. The project to reset America is something that is going to require an unbelievable amount of talent, innovation, risk-taking, and leadership to execute. And what do I mean by that? I'm talking housing, education, wages, all of that. And hey, I support the governor when the governor says, what is the solution to a lot of these problems that we have here in Rhode Island? Jobs. I think that's true. But those jobs must pay, and he talks about growing wages. So those jobs must be in a position where the wages are growing in such a way, not necessarily that you can guarantee to afford to live in the Superman building, but that you can guarantee afford to live in this state. And at this point, we are in a dangerous, dangerous spot, not unlike a lot of the rest of the country, but in a way where I'm very, very concerned about the direction we're going. Very, very concerned. And I think you all are as well. And I hear from you, and we talk about this, and it's a diverse audience of concern on this topic of housing and just generally stabilizing this state for the average person before we go over the waterfall and into the river below of a complete and utter uncertainty and lack of control. So that's that. We'll keep monitoring the Superman building. We've talked about it from a lot of different perspectives here. And again, I'm not necessarily knocking. I probably said this 60 times on this episode. I'm not knocking the project as a whole. I'm not saying shut it down. I just think it's time to point out what it is. Hey, have a press conference. These are luxury lofts or luxury apartments. These are designed for people who either are enormously privileged or who are working in super sectors that we want to attract here so that we can build a more robust economy. Fine. But don't flush this into the broad conversation of housing and try to make a suggestion that this is going to impact, other than taking a couple hundred people who might otherwise take a housing stock that is limited for themselves, and that housing stock then, hopefully at a rate that is affordable, can go to somebody else. So sure, there is a trade-off there. But we got a problem, we got to address it. And it's something that if we don't get to it fast, it's going to get completely out of control. All right, coming up tomorrow on the radio, 4 o'clock, live on WPRO during the Dan York Show, I'll be moderating a debate for treasurer. James Diosa, former mayor of Central Falls. He's the Democrat in that contest. James Lathrop, who is a finance manager in North Kingstown. He is the Republican candidate in that. It's a 30-minute uninterrupted debate. Again, I'll be moderating it. Dan York will have the pre- and post game on that live on WPRO, 4 o'clock. Don't miss it. And we'll have more for you as on all of the other debates that are upcoming. We've got Lieutenant Governor and Congress, CD2, scheduled, and we're working on at least one additional one over on the radio side, the live uninterrupted debates for statewide office, which I'm moderating. And I'm very, very pleased to have that opportunity, something I take very seriously, something I think about as a great honor. And I'm honored that the listeners trust me to do that. So that's all coming up. Obviously, a ton of election analysis as we move forward here. And we'll have plenty more for you, again, on the Superman building as things come up. But I saw that tweet tonight when I was making dinner, and I just couldn't believe that we can I know we're not. People are not going to just be passive on this matter. And this is not a singular issue. It is a specific example of a much broader issue of a challenge that we have to address. Okay, everybody, have a great night if you're listening as soon as I release this, or great day if you're listening to it in the morning or any other point. If you have any thoughts on any of these topics, you can always send me an email, bill@ripodcast.com, and maybe I'll read them on air as well. All right, see you guys soon. Bye. With the increasing legalization of cannabis across the country, including most recently Rhode Island, the cannabis industry is growing at a rapidly accelerating pace. If you are already in the industry or wondering what is the best path to break into the cannabis field, well, the University of Rhode Island has a program to help educate you in the evolving space. Fully accredited by URI's College of Pharmacy, the online certificate program covers topics related to product development, chemical analysis and testing, and patient and customer therapeutics. The next application deadline for the spring 2023 session is November 29th, and courses start January 10th. Join them at 2 upcoming info sessions and learn more at uri.edu/online/cannabis or give them a call at 401-874-5280.
At HealthSource RI for Employers, we provide access to health insurance to more than 1,100 local businesses and nonprofits, and 96% of them renew through us every year. Maybe it's our choice of 19 different health plans, our 10 years of customizing solutions, or our one local team of dedicated experts helping employers find quality health insurance. See how our numbers stack up for you. Learn more at healthsourceri.com/employers.